I could not be more excited about our show today. I am just thrilled on many levels to be sharing some time with you today because we're going to be talking about things of the heart. Sure, this program is about sound ideas to make your life better, right? In your business and personal life. But I believe it's all about the heart. I mean, it's been said that when life is all said and done, all we'll really have are the people we lived and loved and laughed with. And we've said before that the last time I checked, there are no U-Hauls behind any hearse. We're not taking any of this with us. And the heart really is what life is all about. From the Little Prince. And now here is my secret, a very simple secret. It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye. And Leo Tolstoy wrote, I think if it's true that there are as many minds as there are heads, then there are as many kinds of love as there are hearts. The heart symbolizes love and all that is right and true in the world. Our hearts can be crushed and broken, but it is our hearts where we truly live. And today we're going to talk about hearts, love, and hope. Today's program is being brought to you by StreamYard. Put the power of live streaming to work for your brand, your cause, or your business. Stream live to Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and more. Go to StreamYardCause.com. That's StreamYardCause.com to sign up for a free account and receive a $10 credit. Just tell them that Kazi sent you. That's StreamYardCause.com. StreamYardCause.com. My guest today is simply one of the finest pianists on the planet. He has 11 number one hits, 21 top 10 hits, 20 albums, and get this, 2.3 billion streams and counting. He is the recipient of the Dove Award. He is the founder of his own music label, and the accolades just keep on coming. His new album, The Broken Miracle, is absolutely beautiful. So I'm going to share two quick little clips with you, two songs. The first one features Thompson Square. The song is entitled All I See Is Snow. And the second features American Idol star David Archuletta. And the song is My Heart Beats for You.
Blue and red and green. The gifts are wrapped and underneath the tree. Children's laughter fill these empty halls. The spirit's alive and well within these walls. But if everything is how it's supposed to be, tell me why is it all I see is snow. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa. Whoa, whoa. 'Cause I'm not the man that you once met. The day you stole my heart, I was born again, and I live for you until my life is through. My heart, it beats for you. 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 My heart.
He resides in Nashville, but he's on the road. And when I first reached out to him and he was going to be gone for a long time, I thought it was going to be a while before we were going to be able to get him on the show. But he jumped right on my schedule and is joining us from Las Vegas today. My friends, help me welcome the incomparable, the one, the only, Paul Cardall. Paul, welcome.
Hey, Coz, thank you for having me on the show, man.
Hey, it is just a thrill to have you. We worked together virtually on the A Night of Hope for the Life's Worth Living Foundation. Yeah. And you shared your story, and I just got to know you better from that experience producing the event. And I know I'm going to look like Johnny come lately by having you a couple of weeks after John Gossett did, but the Coz Green audio experience and Coz TV would not be the same if we didn't have you on telling your story and talking about your new album and the book and all the great things that are happening in your world. So give us an update. You're on the road. The kids are there. You're sharing Wi-Fi. They're doing schooling. What is going on in the Cardall home?
Well, Vegas obviously is still pretty tight under the COVID, and so most of the schools are closed. My kids since August have been dealing with online schools, so we're anxious for this to get all wrapped up so we can get them, they need to be out on the playground. They need to be socializing, and they haven't been able to have that. So it's a frustrating time, but there's been our predecessors. If we look back at history, I'm a big history guy. We look back at the things they've gone through, and this is just our cross to bear. We talk about the greatest generation that, fought in World War II. And I think a lot about these people, my grandparents who are no longer around. They endured the Depression, the wars, and all this stuff. And now here we are in our time dealing with this. What I think what that says for me is that what will I do with this time that I have? Particularly in my case, where I've fought my entire life to survive and to thrive in this world that's complex but beautiful.
Let's talk a little bit about the album. Let's give that the credit it's due, but then I do want to go back.
Sure.
And go through the miraculous story, because you shouldn't be here.
No, that's why the Broken Miracle. Yeah, that's why the Broken Miracle exists. That's the whole point of this album. I've been in this business about 25 years. I've been very blessed. I have a very loyal fan base in over 160 countries, and I've never really shared my story through the music, through words, through vocals, because people are used to my calm and relaxing instrumental music. And so with the Broken Miracle, you have 11 still uplifting, instrumental, very soothing music that is scientifically proven to boost your immune system and reduce anxiety. And yet I wanted to be so straightforward in things I've been feeling since receiving a heart transplant over 11 years ago. And that's why I recruited all these amazing Grammy-nominated, Dove Award-winning musicians that a lot of people already know, like Thompson Square. They're a Grammy-nominated duo, David Archuletta, household name in Utah, where I'm originally from. And there's so many others, but we've come together to tell the story because, you don't really set out to talk about what you've been through, but I feel an obligation because of the number of people that have been affected by the fact that I'm still alive. Countless parents have children born with a congenital heart defect or some type of chronic illness. And so they've seen me survive and they look to me for advice. And the only thing I can say is, just enjoy every moment and try to be as positive possible and stay on top of your medical team. But ultimately, God is in control and we need to accept that. So Broken Miracle is a big kind of concept memoir album that's actually inspired by the novel, The Broken Miracle, which is a contemporary fiction inspired by my journey. And it's written by J.D. Netto, and it's a 2-part novel. And it's mind-blowing when you have your story written and you go back and you listen to it. But then when you have an album to reemphasize the principles of how to deal with anxiety, depression, losing people, grief, and then all the joy and how you are able to build a career and take care of your family and provide while you're going through, chaos. And that's precisely what the Broken Miracle is. It will offer people a new perspective because it will touch your heart in such a profound way. Not just through the mellow music that kind of just massages us internally, spiritually, but the lyrics have a profound effect on what they're saying.
Well, I know the entire album's not out yet. Is that correct? Because when I tried to buy it, it said pre-sale, but
Yeah.
I was able to get the 2 songs from Thompson Square and David Archuletta. So they're in my morning devotional playlist. So I've heard them a few hundred times already.
Yeah. Well, thank you
for that.
Yeah, it comes out officially February 5th. So if you've listened to this beyond February 5th, it's already out. But right now you have the 2 songs that are available immediately when you go on Spotify or wherever you like to get your music. You can ask Alexa to play whatever's available from the Broken Miracle, and it'll start playing those songs. But that song with David Archuletta was, I texted him the song probably about 2 years ago. I had written it for my wife. As a musician, you think that you're going to write all this inspiring music for the person you're in love with, the person who loves you. And yet it's a challenge because you want it to be perfect. You want it to be so amazing because they're amazing, and you want your love for them to be amazing. So it struggled for some time, but finally we were on a cruise ship and I sat down at the piano and I realized, everything I'd been through and that I'm alive and God gave me this new heart, and my heart beats daily for my wife who I love. And so that's why we came up with My Heart Beats for You. And it tells the story of who I was when she met me and how God has changed me through her and through everything we've been going through. So it's amazing, that whole concept. And then David was just, he's great. He's fantastic. We'd been on tour before in Europe. I took him to Slovenia, where my wife's family is originally from. We played some concert halls, and it was fun to have him around.
Well, it's a great album. I can't wait until the other songs are shared.
These are good. There are some pieces on there from Tyler Glenn, who's the lead singer from Neon Trees. A really heartfelt moment of dealing with the conflict of when you feel like an outcast. How many of us feel like an outcast, like we're treated so differently from the mainstream? But I think everybody feels that. So we have this beautiful piece. There's Rachel Yamagata, who is pretty well known for helping Ray LaMontagne, his career get going. And then there's this gorgeous piece at the end of the album by J. David Broughton. He's a pastor out in Queens, New York. And he has this massive gospel choir. And he wrote the biggest gospel song of all time. And so it's at the very end of the album, and it asks this question: if the world's getting you down, what should you do? And out of nowhere comes this female gospel queen coming in and singing, "We could be kind." So it's a big Q&A on how to treat people amidst crisis and chaos.
Well, and there is plenty of crisis and chaos. And when we thought it couldn't get any worse, we went into 2021, and 6 days into it, the world went upside down even more. So it is crazy. And good music is good for the heart. It's good for the soul.
It's a fact. Yeah, it's a fact. Harvard
frequencies, right? I mean, whether it's 528 or we won't get into all that about just frequency and vibration in this session today, but it is so powerful, and music is so powerful.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother thing, because your body's made up of 90% of water. So you're vibrating and you're coming into my website has a ton of information about the benefits of listening to music and the science behind it, because we've stripped it from the schools.
Yeah.
And so we now have to use science to say, we have to use science now to go, wait a second, we clinically need this. Anxiety exists for a reason. We've stripped spirituality the arts. You can't have all the Age of Enlightenment without the Renaissance.
Amen. And God bless you for your life,
Yeah.
which has brought so much joy and harmony and tranquility to the hearts of many through your music. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.
You didn't think you were going to be a musician when you were little. You just were trying to survive.
Yeah. I don't think any of us really know what we're going to do or what the universe, what God has planned for us. He seems to customize the curriculum for each one of us. And when I came into this world, I had a single functioning ventricle, and the doctors told my parents, immediately after I'd come out, something was wrong. And I was what you call blue baby. And that meant I only had enough oxygen, very little oxygen flowing. So I was born with half a heart, and it required immediate surgery. So from day one, I was raised with, you're probably not going to live very long. I'm not sure what advances in science will come in medicine, but my parents were, strong Latter-day Saints, a lot of faith, a lot of, you can do this, you can make it, you're here for a reason. So with that, though, you have a lot of added pressure to do everything right. So you do get that blessing. I since kind of reverse it and go, it's just whatever God wants for you. And fortunately, I was one whose life was preserved, but I struggled because I had a scar on my chest. I didn't want to go to the pool. We all know what it feels like to go to the pool and have to take off a shirt, or, when we're not fully 100%. And then, you usually get picked last to play basketball. And I was slower than most kids, but I used humor. And then I found music after it was my third major open heart surgery, because at age 13, I almost lost my life. 14, I almost lost my life. I've said goodbye to my family so many times that I'm 47 years old. I shouldn't even be around. But I discovered music at a time where I was really trying to discover, why am I here? I have so many problems internally, but you can't see them. They're physical problems internally. And yet my best friend, who is healthy, runs, plays the piano. At the time I didn't play the piano. He gets hit by a car. Like, what is this about? Why out of nowhere does somebody who's never had to go to the doctor get killed? And I'm paying, doctors, and my parents are stressed with insurance and all these bills and trying to keep me alive and all this stuff. And so I went to the piano because it reminded me of my friend. And that's when I composed the very first song called Dave's Farewell. And the minute I played just a couple notes, I discovered I could play by ear and start to formulate it, because the piano to me looked like a puzzle, and you start putting the pieces together. Some people have the gift. Some people have the discipline. I had the gift. I did not have the discipline, but I worked at it because I loved it. And when I shared that first song with people, they said, "Hey, will you play that again? You want to play that again?" And that's when I realized, oh, maybe this is something I'm supposed to be doing. And I just kept creating and sharing, creating and sharing. And I think that's what we all need to do, is, be the very best we can and give the gifts and share those gifts. Keep sharing, giving, creating. And your path will just kind of find you. Music finds you. It found me. You kind of fall into, Coz, don't you think you kind of fall into what you are led to do versus driven to do?
Well, I believe at some point in our life, we're shown what our calling is. Now, whether or not we accept the calling, because sometimes it's not what we have in store. As
Right.
we've said before, it's not about me, it's about thee. But I think when you let go to the divine and you tap into your calling, amazing things happen. And it sounds like
Absolutely.
you got your calling at a young age as well.
Yeah, I mean, And at age 14, you have to keep in mind when you're born with only half a heart and you're constantly in the hospital, the fact that you turned 14 is a miracle. Every birthday, my parents would gather everybody around the table, and my dad would just reiterate how crazy it was and how amazing it was and how he felt the presence of God when I came into this world, only because I believe they needed that comfort and that reassurance. I'm not any different than any more special than anybody else. I'm a parable. I'm a Lazarus story. When I get to heaven, Lazarus is one of the first person I want to go talk to, because how many times did you have to go out and share your story? And did you ever put it in a book form so people can just pick it up and read it? And, no, there's a couple of verses by Matthew and Mark, and you can go ask those guys how they learned about it.
How did it become your calling, though, and then your profession? You went from 14, and then it just became kind of a whirlwind, how it all played out so quickly for you.
Yeah, I mean, I set out to make films. I wanted to be a filmmaker. But I was asked to play in restaurants. I was asked to play at weddings. People were giving me tips. I got a job in Nordstrom's. And while I was in Nordstrom's just playing, I had made a cassette and told Nordstrom's, if you put it on consignment, I'll play the piano whenever you want me to. And so they put the cassette on consignment, two flight of stairs up at the customer service. So people had to go up 2 flight of stairs to get the cassette. I ended up moving 2,000 cassettes. This was in 1995. And we're constantly trying to print them. But one of the persons that got a copy of the cassette was Richard Paul Evans, because a woman was in Nordstrom's crying, watching me play. My first thought was, she's like, her credit card's maxed out. She wants the lipstick, but she can't get it. But she comes over. She goes, what are you playing? I said, it's a song I've written called Dave's Farewell. And she starts crying, and I get up and I hug her. She said, my husband's name was Dave. He died 4 years ago. And that was a connection. That was the first connection that a child of God had with this music. And then those types of tender mercies started to happen regularly. People at restaurants listening to the music would be crying. And I knew my music dealt with things I was going through and emotions. It wasn't sad music. It was just, there's a spiritual cleansing that seems to take place as you listen. And people were actually paying attention. We're feeling that. And that's when the internet happened. I created a mailing list. And from scratch, sorry about that. And from scratch, you just start building a business. It just starts going. I really didn't have any control over it other than keep playing, share your gift, and remember the people who took an interest in your life, and get their email, get their phone number. And it just kind of snowballed out of that to where Richard Paul Evans invited me to make music, inspired by the Christmas box. I went on tour with him. And that led to a record deal with Virgin Records in 99, back when they were promoting Janet Jackson and Rolling Stones and all these amazing bands. And here I am, this kid from Utah, in Hollywood at Virgin Records right after a mission, and going, what is going on? But things just kind of happen in your life as you just try to keep moving forward. If you want things right away, it's not going to happen. It's just a slow climb. And that's what was happening in my life. And you kind of know what you're calling. It just kind of gradually, like the sunrise. I think some people get that instant, flash of light where they know. For me, it was more sunrise of I can use music to help people feel better. My heart's been healed. I want to make it my life's work to heal other hearts.
Yeah, you battled with your heart for a long time, and then you got a new heart. Tell us about
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting you bring that up because, the novel, The Broken Miracle, that inspired the album. We talk about that. And the main character, who's me, names my heart, because this heart is so damaged and broken. I'm not broken, it's broken. We have parts in us that are broken, but we're not broken. And so I had to learn to understand how to deal with this broken heart. And I name him Sawyer in the book. And we have these conversations like, come on, man, come on, keep up. We got to go on this scouting trip, keep up. And there's all this dilemma, but it's this tug of war. And you're, in and out of hospitals. There's a lot of trauma that builds in. I've had so many surgeries, so much trauma, but not just because of what I've been through and having doctors constantly working on me and operating on me. It's because people around me in the hospital were not surviving. And I was trying to figure out why I'm still here. It's survivor's guilt. And a lot of Marines and soldiers that come back from war have this feeling. And it wasn't until later on in my life, after receiving a heart transplant, that it really just consumed me. A lot of PTSD, and I had to get it addressed. And yet, here's what's crazy, Coz, is had I not gone through these things, I would not be able to convey through music the deepest passion for hope that things get better. And I'll give you an example. I have a piece of music called Redeemer. It's an arrangement of a hymn called I Know My Redeemer Lives. And there's a military base in Iraq. And during the second war under George Bush Jr., there was a base, and a young man from Baghdad who was working on the base, was sweeping the floors. He sent me an email. He found me on Facebook. He sent me an email, and he says, I was so depressed working for this U.S. military base. My entire family was killed in the raid in Baghdad. And I don't even want to live. I just want to quit. But as I was walking down the hall and sweeping, I heard this song being played. And the officer saw me and said, are you interested in this song? And the officer turned it up because he said yes. And the gentleman said, this is called Redeemer. It was some guy from Utah that was playing this music. And this gentleman, this Iraqi, said at that moment he had this overwhelming sensation come through him. And in his broken English in this email says to me, Allah told me I have purpose and I need to be here. I need to live. And it changed him that day. I had when we set out to do art, we have no idea. You put it out there, and we meanwhile sit back and we suffer and try to come up with like the next thing. Leonardo, which one cuts off his ear because he's devastated. And
Van Gogh.
Yeah, and yet out of Van Gogh we have all this. And I'm not saying artists are tortured, but we kind of just go through a lot of things to be able to create what people need.
There's a really powerful twist to where you got your heart from that it's just so powerful. Tell us about the 385 days. Here you are, 36 years old or so, and you're at Primary Children's Hospital. You're waiting for a heart, and you get a heart.
Yeah.
Where'd that heart come from?
It was difficult, and just leading up to that, just so people know how intense this was. My younger brother died while I was waiting for a heart. He wasn't able to be a donor. He struggled with bipolar and mental illness, and so I was telling God, there's no way my mom is going to lose too. Please, And I had waited 385 days. They came in and they told me they had a heart. And it was many months later that I learned it came from a young man, 19 years old, who was a state amateur boxing champion, who had lived in Mexico, whose family had come to America for a better life. And yet they had to go back to Mexico, but he stayed behind with the stepfather. But there was nothing for him after high school because he was a star athlete at a 1A school. He either had to go work in the mine, get into the gangs, whatever, or try to go to college. But where's the money going to come from? How are you going to do that? On his 19th birthday, he signed up to be an organ donor. Ironically, his 19th birthday was the day after my brother was killed. And the two were not even related. It was in 90 days later that this young man, stressed out, depressed, in the mountains with his girlfriend, took his life. So beating in my chest is the heart of a young man who really should not have ended his life. He should have continued on. He didn't have the love and support, but he struggled. He had mental illness, and these are things that we're getting better at and learning about. And I myself have a little stint of mental illness as a result of everything I've been through. But this individual every day I think about him, and my youngest, her middle name is named after him. And she wouldn't even be here. My youngest would not be alive had this young man not registered to be a donor. So out of his sacrifice, he's produced new life, not just for me, but my daughter and her posterity. You think about that. And the other thing, Coz, I was dealing with, like, how in the world can I accept the heart of another person? That means they've gone, they've died. This is somebody's son. This is somebody's brother. This is someone's. How in the world can I take that? And my Christian faith, I wear this sweatshirt a lot. It says "Pick Jesus." It's a guitar pick.
Love it.
But my brother had a prayer with me, and he said, because of your donor, you're able to live a little longer. But because of Jesus Christ, the greatest organ donor of all, you and all of us will live forever. And so that put the perspective in, whosoever lay down their life for another, So I'll be the first in the afterlife rooting for all my friends that have committed suicide who are organ donors, because we don't know what they were going through, but out of that comes new posterity, new generations. And it's a thick irony in life.
And you won't judge them harshly, will you?
Absolutely not. No, anyone who thinks suicide is a sin has not read the scriptures or does not know Christ. Now, if you're not a Christian and you do not have that faith, even in other faiths, other religions, donating your organs is a gift. It's a blessing. What are you going to do when you're gone? You can't use those. You think God has a hard time putting things back together? It was that old stupid thought of, oh, now he's messed up the puzzle, and so we need all the pieces. It's like, so dumb.
Will you take us back to that time in your life? Because when you were getting your heart, you talked about your younger brother being killed, because there's some context around that as it relates to this topic of mental illness. Share with us a little more his story.
Sure. He was 32 years old, a graduate student at Northern Arizona State University. He had created a new field called ecological genetics. And it's profound what he accomplished for the Forest Service. He was instrumental in the Virgin River in Utah, getting water back flowing to Nevada, so Nevada would stop suing Utah. But he was depressed and had a lot of challenges. And, the Broken Miracle book, we get into this deep, much deeper than what I'm going to share with you, because he felt a lot of religious pressure to be perfect. He felt that in order for him to be happy, he has to do this, this, and this. There are certain religions that require work instead of this grace that exists, that to accept the fact that it's already been taken care of, that you're going to fall, you're going to make mistakes, but it's taken care of. You're not going to punish your child because they fell off their bike or they deliberately bullied. You're going to try to discipline them, but you're going to help them and teach them. And this is the God that I know. But he struggled in our culture, and then also science. He was such an intelligent individual. He grappled with these things. So whenever he was out of his routine, he would have these manic episodes, and he was diagnosed as bipolar. But when he stayed in his routine and stayed away from what I call religious zealots, people that remind you what you should be doing instead of loving, it's better to just put your arms around somebody and live by example. Just live your truth than enforce it on people. And so, basically, he just was in a bad spot. And finally, his wife and him they were driving back from St. George doing some field work, and he had an episode, and she called 911 outside of Hurricane to try to get some help. My husband's running around, and he was hallucinating. So 2 truant officers from Hurricane showed up. One was an actual officer, but they were not dressed in their uniform because it was a quick call in a small town, middle of nowhere. They showed up. They just got new tasers from Taser International, and they did not do the training. They just started using them. So when they approached my brother was screaming. He thought these guys were in his hallucination, that they were going to hurt his family. His wife was in the car pregnant, and his daughter. So he thought they pull out these things that look like guns, and he was confused. And anyways, starts yelling at him. And so they instead, within 42 seconds, instead of trying to subdue and talk to him and try to figure out the situation, they pulled out their tasers and they just shot him. This is 55,000 volts, hit him over his chest. The second killed him. Now, I've had pacemakers. I've had a lot of, where you use the paddles.
The defibrillation.
I've had that a lot, and I know what it feels to get shocked. And all of the cardiologists and electrophysicists that I know said, unfortunately, had they tasered him a third time, it would have started his heart back up. The first start rattles it into flutter, fibrillation.
Yeah.
The second one stops it. That's science 101. That's surgery. That's a known fact in medicine. They had not received their training. So yeah, he passed away right there, was not able to be an organ donor.
Right there in front of his wife and child.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And what's crazy, Coz, is, my dad, Dwayne Cardall, he was a journalist for KSL in Utah, a very popular, known religion reporter who used to follow the LDS prophet and cover religion, all these specials between general conferences out there in Utah. And people knew him, and they knew because of my success in my career, the newspapers were writing about my story. And so when it came across the wire, the radio, that son of Dwayne Cardall has died, I'm at home with oxygen. I knew about the death, but the answering machine, and I couldn't get to it because I was on all this oxygen, kind of strapped to the chair and couldn't move. I was just in a bad condition. Out of nowhere, I started getting all these calls, and people thought I had died. So they're sending their condolences. So I got to hear neighbors and friends call my wife and explain, their condolences. And so it's like, you see these shows where people create their funerals and actually go to their funerals and see what people do and say. But it was a real surreal moment for me, and just like, but it was devastating. It was just absolutely devastating.
Were you ever able to forgive the police officers?
Oh, right away. That's not my rule.
Where'd you find that?
You can't be angry at stupid.
Okay,
You
I'll
know,
remember that.
I've seen enough Barney Fife films to know there are just morons in this world, and you can't hold them accountable, or their dumb parents who never taught them how to read instructions on
You can't fix
on
stupid.
weapons. No, you can't fix stupid. And these guys run around with weapons like it's the end of the world. And I'm all for the Second Amendment, but a little bit of police work, a little bit of training, particularly with the mentally ill. Majority of people in prison are mentally ill. They were not in them
on the streets.
Yeah, they were not in their right mind making these decisions. Now we need to help control that situation, but there's a way to do it without pulling out a taser and electrocuting people. You're basically giving them a death sentence right there. That's the electric chair has that many volts.
I don't think we would know that.
Yeah, so you point a gun at somebody, and your wife and your child are in the car, But as far as forgiveness, no, these guys were trying to do the job with the IQ that they have.
Your philosophy or your theology has evolved over time. So you grew up in a very religious home, but as I've heard your story more and more recently, you're a lot less, using your word, you're a lot less of a zealot. And I love your style.
Well, I appreciate that. I try to run from what's called the prosperity gospel.
And it's there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Majority of my faith is revolved around the New Testament's 4 gospels. Christ was very clear when he said, whosoever loveth fulfills the law. And he also said he had come to fulfill the law and the prophets, and he is the new high priest. And so for me personally, I don't believe we're supposed to have the middlemen. I think the middlemen exist primarily to organize community so that we can be with like-minded people. We can do missions and bless the world. We can manage tithing to help. But you're supposed to have a personal one-on-one relationship with your source. Now, for me, it's Jesus Christ. I don't enforce that on anybody. Jesus never said, hey, he didn't say to everybody, come follow me. He said to Matthew, come follow me. Peter, come follow me. So if he's calling you, then pick Jesus. But if you have something working for you and you're happy, why am I going to interrupt that and create more anxiety in your life? And I'll give you an example. We travel worldwide, and a lot of traveling has shaped my thinking. I'm also married to somebody who grew up Catholic, worked for Rick Warren, who wrote the second biggest selling book next to the Bible called Purpose Driven Life. And I was in Sri Lanka, and I went to a Hindu temple, and I was judgmental. I was like, what is all this? All these gods, and you guys worship all these deities. And I was like, it's idol worshiping. I was so naive and stupid. I thought I knew because I had been indoctrinated to think a certain way. And then I said, I'm just going to observe. And I asked God, just show me what's here. And there was this young couple, and they were beautiful, and they were fully dressed in their temple clothing for the Hindu temple. They had their little baby. And here comes the priest, girded about his loins with this, what looks like kind of a little skirt. And he's doing all this stuff back there. I don't even know what he's doing. But this couple gave their baby to this man who was the priest, and the priest took it before the gods. And I saw the tears in this parent's face. And then the priest handed the child back. What happened right there, I saw in principle. Here is a couple a husband and a wife, loyal, committed to one another in a covenant relationship, interested in giving this child a beautiful future, protecting this child, always being there for this child, and asking God to come into that relationship and be part of that relationship. Those principles, though it is Hinduism, aligns with the gospel of Jesus Christ. I saw it there and I thought, I'm not going to disrupt this. Why do I want to disrupt this? Let them alone, as Christ said. When there's a lot of scriptures where the apostles are asking, what about these people? What about these people? What about these people? And there's a scripture where Christ says, let them alone, for they have a good thing. But we don't always pay attention because we're distracted by the middlemen giving us all these messages when we should be right there in the red letters where Jesus is telling us truth, how loved we are, how beautiful we are, and how he's already paid the price for us. And we just need to embrace and accept that love. And that's the motivation. That's the drive. The fact that we are loved, we are valuable. We don't have to worry about it because he's taken care of it. And we put such an emphasis on what you have to do to feel his love. And it's not true. It's absolutely not true. There's so much happiness outside of a culture of organized faith.
You've lost some friends to the guilt and the shame.
Yeah, because, and I'll be pretty frank here. I don't know anywhere in the New Testament where the church held a council for somebody that had been made some mistakes. They never held a council. Did you ever see Jesus hold a council? The only council that was ever held was with him. And what did they do? They killed him. They got rid of him. They excommunicated him. So my friends, and we all have friends, we all know somebody who have struggled with addiction, problems, challenges. And there's so much pressure to live a certain way that they forfeited what they thought was their entire salvation, their exaltation, their marriage, everything. Because when Latter-day Saints make mistakes and fall, we feel so much guilt and pressure and shame because we're not meeting the highest level of expectation. So we fall hard. And my friend Stoney Winterton, and it's very well known about Stoney. Stoney and his wife were very trying to work things out in their marriage because he had some addictions. But he fell again to some things. And he thought he was a problem, a burden, and that he's just doomed. There's no exaltation. There's no possibility for him. He didn't know the grace of Jesus Christ. He didn't know that Christ had his back and could help him just by loving him, not by doing anything else, not by paying your tithing, not by this, reading your scriptures, not by going to temple daily, just by embracing that love, that you are loved, you are valuable to God. And yet he took his life and ended his life. And of course, his wife has since remarried and has written a beautiful book about their journey dealing with these things. My friend had a problem with his heterosexuality. He was addicted to sex. And then on the far spectrum, my other friend who worked for President Boyd K. Packer, who was an apostle for the LDS Church in the missionary department, my friend Chris Beers, a good man, worked for the church, loved the church, just a great person. Everyone adored him, but he was gay. And he made one mistake. And he was so depressed because he cannot have a covenant relationship. You see, my other friend can be in a covenant relationship and make all these mistakes, but he can't even have a relationship if he's going to stay in a prosperity gospel. So he ended up taking his life as well. So my message, my hope is that we can come to an understanding of a deeper learning of who Jesus Christ was. Focus on what he said in the New Testament. Get very acquainted with Hebrews chapter 1 through 11. Paul, all the apostles, but Paul specifically. Very, very clear. Very, very clear. And you don't have to suffer because Christ suffered for you.
Why do you think we give the middlemen so much power?
Because Well, it's called the legacy burden, and this is a Dr. Schwartz is a world-renowned uh, family parts therapist, psychologist. You can learn about parts therapy on YouTube, Dr. Schwartz. But the legacy burden is this thing that we carry with us, whether we come from, the Italians. We're Italian. Everybody has a stigma like you're Italian, so you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do this. One of my favorite comedians is Sebastian, uh, and he always talks about, it's my father did this, I got to do it. Um, if my brother-in-law is black, so he carries with him the weight of the past, and he struggles. Like he lives in Dallas, Texas, and he gets pulled over driving to work at 5 a.m. His my sister, who is white, their son, who is mixed, gets pulled over in his car. He's been profiled, and I always thought that was just craziness. That doesn't happen. But I grew up in Utah, so I love Utah, but there's not a lot of diversity to really show what's really going on. But I think we put our trust in what we've been taught our entire life. And look, some people are meant to be within organizations that have middlemen. I really think that. My kids are fully active in the LDS Church, and I encourage them to seek their own journey, their own understanding, their own experience. But I want them to know that they're loved and valuable, and when they make mistakes, it's okay. Let's just pick ourselves up, dust ourselves up, and keep going. It's not, oh my gosh, now you can't do this, now you can't do that. Rick Warren, I posted this just recently on my blog. I have a faith blog on Instagram, and he said, we always say, love the sinner, but hate the sin. And he said, we need to change it. Love the sinner and hate my sin. We tend to point the fingers, and kind of I'm doing that a little bit with this conversation. But what I'm trying to encourage people to do is just dig deep into, and this has worked for me. If you're a Christian, what Jesus said in the New Testament, read it without the commentary, read it without the footnotes, read different versions. I think it was, President Uchtdorf. He always references the NIV, and that's because his English. He's German. He's got to do English. So the King James Version is not easy for foreigners. So they rely on these other sources. So it's okay. In fact, it's encouraged to read different versions of the Bible. And the NASB is the most correct translation. And then the King James Version. And there's actually a chart that shows the different versions. But by reading that and diving deep into it without anybody's commentary, don't read the commentary from the Baptist Church, the Seventh-day, the Mormon, whatever. Just read you and the Bible and see what it does for you, see what you learn. And then take that into the faith that you have and see if it lines up with what is being taught.
Do you believe that most of our problems right now in the world are because there's so many middlemen in all the aspects of our lives? And we've given up this relationship with God, so we seek to have these relationships with men in authority who are somehow going to save us and solve all of our problems, whether it's in a tall office building or it's in a White House or a Capitol. We've given all of our personal responsibility away, and we're not doing very well.
Well, it's obvious that our politics are extremely corrupt. They always have been. I mean, the bottom line, when the country started, which is this is the greatest country on earth. It is inspired by God. It is powerful, but we had to borrow money. John Adams went to the Dutch. We went into debt to have this idea of America. But, people take advantage of other people. It's just the way it always is. There's always a ladder people are trying to climb. We're not satisfied with what we have. We want more. It's always in our nature, you know. We want more people to listen to our podcast. We want more people to do this, do that, do that. Eventually, people get into positions of power because it's contagious, but also because it's just a system that we've created. So it's a wheel that is in place. There will always be distractions to keep you from your divine source, from recognizing your value. And I think it's become harder and harder because there are so many voices. James E. Faust, one of my favorite leaders from the LDS Church, talks about all the voices that we hear constantly. It's like tuning in a radio. What voice do you listen to? How do you decipher what is right and what is wrong? There are so many conspiracy theories going around right now about, you know, President Trump trying to fight the Chinese bank, and, you know, that the COVID is a biochemical weapon. And then you have all these. And so what people do is they try to instill fear in you, because fear creates power. If you can get people to be afraid, you know, they do it on QVC. You have to have this joy. You have to have this. If you don't have this shiny thing, you know, it all goes back to the Bible. But let me reference Tolkien's The Hobbit. We all want the ring. You know, what is that ring? That ring is your addiction, and it's the thing that destroys you. And everybody wants power, but that ring, you want to conquer your addiction, but you also use your addiction to get what you want, because you don't know how to soothe yourself with your mind and discipline. And I fall into this too. I'm the worst sinner of all. You know, this is why I need a source like Jesus Christ. Because he goes to the woman at the well who is an outcast. Those apostles wouldn't touch her with a 10-foot pole. And yet he's there saying, "You're amazing. I love you. You're great. Go back to Samaria and enjoy your life." You know, the leper, nobody would dare get near that guy. So if you think that you're, you know, with these middlemen telling you to be in the circle and be with those that have kind feelings, then what I think is it contradicts. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. But Jesus said, if you just love your brother, you're the least in the kingdom. So you're actually in a telestial state. But if you reach out to people that are Gentile, or people that are not of your tradition and faith, and people that the middlemen want you to convert rather than just befriend, love without an agenda, you know, you need to love without an agenda. Then what happens, what I've discovered, and I know I'm being very bold about this stuff, is that we lose focus. But Jesus says this is the greatest in the kingdom, is those who lay down their lives for another, a stranger, but kind of a long answer to your short question of middlemen. There's always going to be middlemen. Always will be. It's just, are you making them your idol? Are they facilitating you for God? Do you know God, or do you know them better? If you know them better than God, then you got to fix that.
I made a post a couple of days ago and just said that I'm just amazed, or how interesting it is that we're just lining up to throw rocks across the street at our neighbors, right? We're so judgmental about the other half. And I just said, what have you done recently to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, serve the needy? Imagine if we just all started right there now on something like that. Instead of throwing rocks and judging so harshly, what if we actually just stopped and tried to tap into the power of love instead of love of power? We could fix this. But it's easy to do that.
Well, you got to put on that Huey Lewis song, "The Power of Love."
A
Musician in me coming out.
That was the last time the news was anything good, is when it was with Huey Lewis.
Yeah, I've seen that meme. It's so true.
The Cancer News Network.
Yeah, my dad was, because he was in journalism. You know, he was during the Cronkite days, the early days where you had three channels, three voices to choose from, and so they competed against each other. not for ratings, but for that #1 award of the best and most trusted news. But I think the biggest problem is that we are now in a rating system. Like Facebook began, people love Facebook, but let's not forget why it started. Zuckerberg was rating women based on whether they were attractive or not. It's the most shallow thing on the planet. And yet he's got so much money in Facebook and everything. And I'm going to shut off Facebook for saying this, but it's just, that's what evolved. So now we have a rating system, Consumer Reports. You like it, you don't like it, you thumbs up, thumbs down. We're rating people. We're rating people. We're rating people like merchandise. Like, we become so materialistic that we are rating human beings, somebody's son, somebody's daughter, our Heavenly Father's kids. We're rating them, whether they're good or bad. And then we divide them. Oh, 1/3 are awful. The rest are great. You guys can be added upon. But everyone else, you guys are just, there's no chance ever for you.
I don't think we're being rated. I think we're being berated, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, they really are psychological lashings. And think about it. We become such a society addicted to the dopamine of the like that there's actually people going through crazy fits of depression because their meme or their picture just didn't get enough likes. And their whole self-concept evolves around whether or not they're liked today.
Yeah,
its source is divine and comes from elsewhere, not from a screen in your hand.
It's so difficult, man, because when you have kids and you recognize what's going on, how do you teach them their value when and their friends aren't responding, or they get kicked out of a group, get kicked out of a group, a conversation? Don't even invite me to the group. I got things to do. I got to go watch the sunrise, listen to some new music. But it's tough because the kids, man, this is the world they're growing up in. And we really need to come together. I don't know how that's going to happen. We need a leader. There is I haven't seen a leader in a very long time.
It's going to take an amazing leader, and maybe the greatest leader of all, to come back.
Oh, he's coming.
Absolutely. Probably sooner than you and I want to admit.
Yeah. I hope not too soon, though. I mean, I'm kind of enjoying the fact that I've survived.
Yeah.
And I like mortality. It's painful, very painful. But when you have those moments and your kid runs to you and hugs you, or you're just with them doing a little bit of homework and they say something so crazy, you're like, man, the world can go to hell because you have all this beauty, all these moments. And that's, you try to cherish those.
Usually I was the guy that would say something if somebody's phone went off, but I had called Allison before you and I connected, so it was going through the board. So my apologies. Let's conclude with this thought. It was interesting. I heard in an interview you did recently that there's actually DNA in the blood and in the heart. And you believe or know that when you got your heart transplant, things changed for you because of the DNA you got from the other person. Let's conclude, not that we want to go back to the whole mental health thing, but I think it was just a powerful lesson you taught, that you have some DNA in you from someone else and it affected your life. Because I think there's a lot of, you're a living parable, like you said. To me, I got about 5 different things from that. But tell that story, draw that conclusion, connect those dots for us. And I think it's a good place to start to wrap up.
Well, it's a fact. It's a scientific fact. I've talked to neurologists. I've talked to transplant teams. It's now on the cutting edge of information that we carry within us muscle memory, DNA. Your DNA remembers things. That's why you're able to ride a bike. That's why you're able to, play music or do these things. You just do it. Like when people get amnesia, they they start to remember things because of the memory DNA. People that have dementia, Alzheimer's, they can sit down and hear a song and start singing because of the muscle memory. So when I got the heart, it carried within it the DNA of this young man. I used to say I'm from the tribe of Ephraim, but I have the heart of Manasseh, because he's this amazing kid that was born in Mexico. So now I feel like I have this family and this heritage in Mexico, but you do have that DNA. And so when I got this heart, I didn't know if it was survivor's guilt or the fact that my friends were, not getting transplants and dying. I was just in a really dark place, and it took a toll on my marriage, to the point where, it just fell apart. I didn't know what was going on. And, religious pressure, all these voices, everything, me trying to figure out why I'm alive. We then figured it out. A lot of it had to do with, a diagnosis of having some mental illness because of the trauma. But on top of that, the muscle memory of whatever pain this other person was feeling. So that DNA in that person I feel part of that. And, it's helped me understand in terms of Christianity. We talk about how does Jesus truly know us, and how does he really recognize? I believe somehow there's this DNA connection with him that is in all of us, that we are so connected. We are so related. Genealogy is proving this. Genealogy looks like a DNA strand. What are the odds of that? But you trace your ancestry back enough, you find out we're all related. And so we all have the same feelings, same emotions, same passion. But that heart coming into my chest with whatever he went through, occasionally I feel things that I'm like, it's not me. The Broken Miracle novel, part 2, we give that new heart a name. So I have conversations like, dude, what are you doing, man? Like, leave me alone today. I don't want to feel that. So it's fun, but it's a little strange, but getting used to. But you just try to learn it and get it under control.
No, it's a powerful concept. Like I said, in so many different ways. So he was 19 years old. You were 36 or 37 when the transplant occurred?
I was 36.
So for 36 years of your life, you didn't have a complete heart, right? And you talked about when you were born, you were bluish, not Jewish. You were bluish, kind of a Smurf baby. And because you never had enough oxygen. And then all of a sudden you had a transplant. Now you've got a body that is oxygenated. Oh, I thought I was going to nail that word. You had a body that had enough oxygen, that was oxygenated.
Yeah, I definitely was dumber. Because I didn't get the oxygen flow to the brain for the brain to fully function. And so when I got the transplant, you have to understand it's like getting a brand new computer. It's like going from the very first Windows to getting this advanced Macintosh computer that functions properly. So it enlightened.
I like your example. Do the your uncle or grandpa's truck.
Oh, well, it's like I used to drive around this old beat up truck. Everyone loves it. Kids get in the back. We go fishing on the dirt road. And then all of a sudden you have to turn it in, and they give you the keys to a 911 Porsche.
And that's what you got.
So my brain started to function in a way that I became enlightened, more intelligent. So I had learned everything. And this is what they're telling me. I don't know if anybody's smarter, but they told me that when back then I learned everything, as a B student, but now there's such an increase in information that I'm able to process thoughts, and the people I've met with and talked to have said, the IQ level has like shifted dramatically to things I don't even believe are true, but there's this overwhelming shift that's taken place. So
that's powerful.
I recommend them. Heart transplant's fantastic.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think I need to transplant I can't. You know what? I go to the camera to you so that I can sit back here and just listen to you. I mean, this has been emotional, and we've gotten some comments today. We said in the introduction this would be about the heart, and I just want to thank you for bringing your heart, his heart, the heart that beats in your soul, but the heart that is you because of you being a child of God and your unique perspective. Just thank you for being you and sharing yourself so openly and being so vulnerable today. It's hard to find in today's world.
Well, every day is a gift. You survive and you adapt. You just try to enjoy everything because it'll be gone. My daughter I have a daughter that's 9 years old and a daughter that's 15. They will not be that age ever again. I have time with them. I mean, that's all that matters.
What is your hope for people in today's world?
My hope is that people will recognize their value, not in a way that says I'm greater than you, but in a way that says I'm enough. And because I'm enough, I can love other people. You need to love yourself the way God sees you, not the way the world sees you. You're not valued by what you have because you can't, as you said in the beginning, take that in a U-Haul with you. All you can take with you is what you've learned and how you've treated people. Legacy, Clayton Christensen said this. It doesn't, it's not about up, it's about out. Your love, how it expands out. And that's something I'm working on every day. I have a lot of moods. I get angry, but the goal is to learn to love other people as you've begun to love yourself. So I just want people to be not so worried about their rating. But
I changed the ratings. That's why I got out of TV after all those years.
Yeah.
Out of the ratings war, right?
It's crazy. It all comes down to advertising anyways in that world.
Sure.
It doesn't matter if it's a good show. If it doesn't get the commercial to pay for it, it doesn't matter.
Steve Jobs said, people don't know what they want until you show them. And that's what advertising's based on. So find the authentic you, find the authentic world around you, and live from a place more from your heart and not your head. The head's going to get you in trouble, but the heart is always true. Paul Cardall, composer, artist, pianist, great soul. The new album is The Broken Miracle, also a new book. When does the book come out?
The book is February 2nd. You can get the first 3 chapters for free at thebrokenmiracle.com.
Awesome. And then by the time you may watch this video, there's a lot of people watching it live right now on all the different platforms. And then as this goes out on Coz.tv, we'll have more viewers. But look for the album as well. We played at the beginning of this. If you missed it, go back and there's a preview of the song featuring Thompson Square as well as David Archuletta. Beautiful songs available now for download. You can buy the album, get those 2, and the rest will be delivered at the 1st of February when the album is released. Paul Cardall, an absolute pleasure and treat for all of us to get to know you better. You're a good man, my friend, and I've just enjoyed this experience together.
All right, Coz, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Appreciate it.
Have a great day. And as we always say, as we close out the podcast, keep smiling. Keep shining brightly because someone out there needs to be guided by your light. Your light.